ni ja su ji da gi ju ni ji pe so nam ji ro la ben ji zan ni ru wa yu jiu dan zu ji jiu nam la jiang jiu ba du da ni ja su ji da gi ju ni ji pe so nam ji ro la ben ji zan ni ru wa yu jiu dan zu ji jiu nam la jiang jiu ba du da ni ja su ji da gi ju ni ji pe so nam ji ro la ben ji zan ni ru wa yu.
Tama tsuwa de lende she sama she da sama san de judu sha chu sa chi su non ta san de judu sha chu wo de ma ro de ma ba ka zin wo de tu chi za de roz chin lende she sama she da sama san de judu sha chu de ni ma ba chi
la sa
chi ten ba da che ba tu ji jang bu chu
la sa
sa ji ni ro
la sa so we are currently in Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, in the section on karma and its results. So there are three major headings when we look at the outline of that particular section. The first is reflecting on karma and its results, or karma and its effects in general. The second section is reflecting on karma and its effects specifically, or the particulars of karma and its results, effects rather. And then the last category is cultivating ethical behavior, how you should engage in virtue and turn away from non-virtue after having reflected on karma and its effects in general and in detail. So we're in that last section, the third section, because we've already finished the first two. And that section has two major categories. First, just a general explanation, and then the next category, which is in particular the way of purification by way of the four opponent powers. So this is the section that we're in, and then specifically the section on the four opponent powers.
What the Chabad Tuji Jambu, what the Chabad Tuji Jambu de la Chabad Tuji Jambu Sud Lo de Tenma Kazoma Zo Tenma Riba. Rose Sinsar, Tano Negachibu, Yanta Ruru Sinamara. Chabad Niba Tuji Jambu Tunes, the Tanya Shiji Magubala, Bejan, Pamabatan, Yomo, La Subi, Ongi. Nyaba shuna jema nyaba majaba temba tuji chenji jubi ta tansu somba na la mego sos o tel nyaji saji ji din tambu do tin sare.
Lesson. So we've gone over this section quite a bit, but it's such an important section that hold on one second. Should I repeat that or no? So this is such an important section that I feel we should go over it again. So we're going to go through this and looking specifically at Jayan Sheba's outline as we do. So the first section of Jayan Sheba's outline is that one should apply the methods that the Buddha has taught to any non-virtue that one is engaged in, even if it's non-virtue that was done because of carelessness, because of a state of unknowing, or because of being influenced by the afflictions, and so forth. So we might want to be free from certain negative behaviors, but those previous mentioned influences keep us from being able to completely turn away from wrongdoing. So this first section of Jayan Sheba's outline deals with the need for a method that will serve as a remedy or an antidote to these kinds of non-virtues that are done, even if one doesn't want to engage in them. Less so. Less so. Less so. So then the next section of Jayan Sheva's outline deals with the remedy for infractions or for downfalls. And then the next section is dealing with the remedy for all other misdeeds or misdeeds. Less so.
Doma susu ne somba dar shalas ta tonga she jibu su tonga de suta susu tabi domba shansan domba sang domba son yoro ta ane susu tabi domba she jibu su sang shansan domba she jibu su ane sang domba she jibu su son do ta de suta domba she jibu su de jaba ta an su ge wa sujung su de jo marba sujung shao da she 세중아 라오스 나를 소중히 소그로다 하는 당 잡았어요. 어디 동아시 주비도 어디 인사래? 전에 샹셀레 소소아요아래 카게 소소아요아래 어디 동아시 주비도 어디 인사래? 니버체
Less so. So this second category that deals with remedy, so it reads in the great treatise, now in regard to how to remedy any infractions. So again, the word downfall could be also used. So it says, do as it is explained in the context of the three vows. So this is specifically talking about when one has broken any of the three types of vows and how to remedy those kinds of negativities. So the three types of vows are referring to the individual liberation vows, the bodhisattva vows, and then the tantric vows. So each of those sets of vows have a specific ceremony to remedy that is exclusive to those vows themselves. So if one has created a downfall, which is a breaking a vow, breaking of a vow, then one applies the appropriate remedy according to what kind of vow it is. So if it's an individual liberation vow, for instance, the monks and nuns have a ceremony for remedy, which is called sojung. So we're going to call sojung, and the sojung is a ceremony to remedy. So the monks and nuns have a sojung, a ceremony to remedy any downfalls that they've created by breaking any among their vows. So this is done 2 times in a month period, on the 15th day of the month calendar, and then the last day of the month. So this is how the individual liberation vows are remedied. So there's a sojung, a ceremony to remedy for those. And then the bodhisattva vows have their own ceremony to remedy, their own sojung. And then the tantric vows have their own ceremony to remedy, or their own sojung. So this is what is being referred to here, the specific way to remedy, the specific antidote to the negativity, which is a downfall. And here that's a separation from one's vow. And again, among the 3 vows, speaking of the individual liberation vow, bodhisattva vow, and the tantric vow. Diksun.
다 somba deba shi jubsu dredwa somba da deba shi jubsu doji shade chuji denbi dole shamba shangchu samba chenmo chuji dan dena deba shi saba seju na banjoros o tege deba shi jubsu dudu jen somba izare.
So the third section of Jayan Sheba's outline deals with the remedy or the antidote for misdeeds. Here we have the word sin, so sins or misdeeds. So it says, however, you should remedy sins through the 4 powers. So this particular section on remedying sins or misdeeds has 2 parts. First, the abbreviation or the abbreviated, or the summary would be the best word, of the 4 powers. And then the second category of the expanded explanation of them. So this is category number 3, how to remedy sins. So however you should remedy sins through the 4 powers. The sutra giving the 4 teachings says, Maitreya, if bodhisattvas, the great heroes, possess these 4 teachings, then they will overcome any sins that they have committed and accumulated. So that is the section on the abbreviated or the summary of the 4. Dixon. The Dudushe.
And then Deba non Chishu the Sheshi Sabile, Sheshi Sabile, that and then Deba Magoju, and then Shegu San Junior San Don Deba Mugo Shebaina, Sheshi Sabile, what the Nebile, Debinu, Nebile, Sukalo, Tatu Gores, and then Mangabile Tabal Kichaka Mares.
Lessa.
What is on the summer Chujit on the Nas.
Then the Dudushe, then Jeba Sheba. The Jeba nge Lama son chu de lo.
The Dudu that chooses the dance and never told you the law.
Lessa.
Never send you without. And then never going to shoot it out. Never had to change it out. Change it to shit on Dana. And the Deba Choke and the Jima in the Tatu Grace.
Less, okay.
And the Deba choose the Tawal Kisha. Choose it on Dana. Less so, 2 Chena. So then the expanded explanation, what are the 4? They are the power of eradication, the power of applying remedies, the power of turning away from faults, and the power of the foundation. And then, it stated that all these 4 opponent powers have the ability to purify any type of misdeed. And it's stated previously in some of scripture, the Buddha stated that there is no misdeed that cannot be purified. No misdeed so great that it cannot be purified by way of the 4 opponent powers. Even the 5 heinous crimes or the 5 irreversible actions can be purified. And then it speaks of karma that one has done and accumulated. So karma that is done and accumulated is a karma that one is certain to experience. It states here that the 4 opponent powers can destroy that kind of karma, which is the most negative type of karma. So if that is the case, then there's no need to wonder if karma that is uncertain or not accumulated can be purified as well. This next section, you will definitely experience the result of karma that you have done and accumulated. Since the 4 powers can destroy this kind of karma before it starts to take effect, it goes without saying that the 4 powers can destroy karma whose result is indefinite. The 4 powers are as follows. Lessa. Less. And never going to shoot it, never less. Then you talk what is it there?
Lesser.
Choose it on then as you what there is.
Lesser.
Yeah.
So when we then look at these 4, it says the 4 powers are as follows. What are these 4 powers? So first is the power of eradication, then the power of applying remedies, then the power of turning away from faults, and then last the power of foundation or power of basis. So we begin then with the power of eradication. This one.
Oh yeah, that the name what the that jig not number to what the Tuma member and Magoa, Magi Leshebala, Joba Moa in this. No, never going to shoot because and Tombo the number sentient good should be tossed again. Number sentient good Diva shades about the Juba Jiatris, Juba Marva. What the Domin, what the number sentient good to show about down. What the Geshe that shares on this. That Domin. Toma mebane megi leshe bala joba moyi des naba senje bakun de shebe tawsade toma meban tadiba löji diba ngagi diba hiji diba sa shabadele tandri masonya bin joba sheya trote naba senje ba ne good shebe tawsade hotel ko gores marba
So the first power is the power of eradication. So the power of eradication is having regret for having engaged in non-virtuous activity since beginningless time. So here it says the first power is great contrition for having done non-virtuous action since beginningless time. In order to feel this, it is necessary to meditate on the way in which you produce the three effects of actions, etc. So once you accumulate a misdeed, this particular step is regretting having committed that misdeed, or accumulated rather that misdeed. Dikso.
Oje odi jobo kasa la do lambi sene so tambi shaba dan sangi sungi gone shishaba ni ji shawo sa ta du ji so sa ta nyeba de joba je sa du nyeba meba zoya go da de so tamba ni shi shaba dan sanji sungi gone shaba do de je gures du ji so sa.
So one thing that I forgot from before is karma that one has accumulated is a karma that is done and has a large amount of premeditation before before doing it. So when we're that type of karma is karma that is accumulated and then certain to experience. So Rinpoche stated that before, and I missed it, so I just remembered that. Going back to where we are, the power of eradication. It says, in order to feel this, it is necessary to meditate on the way in which you produce the three effects of actions, fruitional and so forth. At the time of putting this into practice, do so by way of the two methods, the confession of sins in the Sutra of the Golden Light, and the confession of sins by way of the 35 Buddhas. If we're looking at the summary of these points, it's stating that once you have thought about the reason for regretting what one has done, and you generate the regret, then you acknowledge that downfall, that your regret, by way of these two methods. Then these are two sutras that have these methods in them. First, the Sutra of the Golden Light, and then the Sutra of the 35 Buddhas.
Tato nyeba kunshi to la tu the Lari Chimnuma the Hitchin Tes Momudua.
Lesser.
Lari Saji Tulte no the Dudu Abdu.
Lesser.
Saji Tule. Chaba the Tuji Jambuchulo, Tela Geles, Naba Sunji Vito, never going to Shibito, never had to Vito, Tenji Toso, Tenji Toso. Never going to be told a true, do the Samun Laba, Tony Gumba, Zunga La Temba, Ten Jimba, Choba La Temba, Sala Tembas, Sajino, the Diabdo, La Richmond, the Rare and the Hijim, Sajitul Teno, the John Debudua,
Lesser. So the next section, the power of applying remedies. We'll just look at the names of the remedies, so the actual outline. So that if you then can know what the main points are, the outline is, and you can hold on to that, then you can look at what it means and how it's explained in this section. So if you know the section headings, it'll be very helpful. So we'll look at it in this way. So there are 6 sections to the power of applying remedies. The first is dependence upon profound sutras. The second is interest in emptiness. The third is dependence upon recitation. The fourth is dependence upon images. The fifth is dependence upon worship or offering. And then the sixth is dependence upon names. So these are the 6 heading names. And then again, they're explained in this section underneath each heading. Digsum.
Oji tate lari cheba no to nipa la true less. Tamundu de samula temba marba.
Lesso.
Tamundu de samula temba ne shishin la sube ndui si lemba dan, zemba dan, luba su sos. Ta te katuro te ta ngasu jite she wudo te shishin se ruwa. Shishin la suba shishin se te da kare se na shishin jedan shishin song yu song. Rebu shishin de sanji dan tuji re. Sanji ina rebu shishin imichab. Rebu shishin ina sanji imichab. Ani jogo dan longo dan, eji jogo dan wonyi u sama lo dan rebu shishin ila gore. Rebu shishin. Iti parshivashin sabola bakala.
Resultant perfection. Effect, yes. Effect, perfection.
Ete perfection ruwa. Ete perfection te wote sanji de tuji jashin de.
Yin chap.
Sanji ina ete perfection imichab. Perfection ina sanji imichab.
Lesso.
Te taji jeshu ruwa.
Seldu.
Ta nyeba de ane
Ju parlushin.
lan shishin se ruwa. Ju pashin se na ta lan shishin se ruwa. Lan shishin pat perfection ruwa.
Lesso.
Lan shishin tang shangchu senpi lan tuji jashin jire. Shangchu senpi lan ina lan shishin imichab. Lan shishin ina shangchu senpi lan imichab.
Lesso.
Wote taji je jiga duwa.
Lesso.
Wote ngen gudu ta.
Okay.
Shishin sin karla wena san wote tuwa
Lesso. So the first says dependence upon profound sutras includes such activities as receiving the oral transmissions of the sutras, such as the Prajnaparamita, retaining their meaning and reading them. So Prajnaparamita in that's a Sanskrit word. So in English it's translated as perfection of wisdom. There is 2 different types of perfection. So you could also just translate it as perfection. It literally means like going to the other side if you break down the etymology of the word. But we've used this word perfection in English, so we're going to stick with that. So there are 2 types of perfection. There is resultant perfection, and then there's path perfection, sometimes called causal perfection. So resultant perfection is referring to Buddhahood, the Buddha. So if it is a Buddha, it is resultant perfection. If it is resultant perfection, it is necessarily a Buddha. So here these are synonymous words. The dunchik, sanjay dan, yeah. So these are synonymous words. So this is what it's referring to. So if we look at any among the Dharma body or truth body, the enjoyment body, or the emanation body, and then or the exalted wisdom body, yeshichuk, and the nature body, any of these types of bodies would categorically fall under this resultant perfection. So that's what we mean by resultant perfection. Causal perfection or path perfection is referring to the bodhisattva path. So these 2 things are synonymous. So if it is path perfection, it is the bodhisattva path. If it is the bodhisattva path, then it is necessarily path perfection. So this word perfection, I felt that this word perfection should be examined a little today. So this is why I'm explaining these different categories so that the understanding of this word prajnaparamita can be achieved.
Ta somba de jung shishin la gorda, jung shishin, ta jung shishin sena karsa, panja paramata books, nga chu hotela ndigo de galla ndigo ta, rebi shishin ta, lan shishin tempi, 상지 가요 상지 가 상지 복스으로
Lesso.
뭐 가도 용시신
Lesso.
용시신 그 라시신 다 저번 시신 조야시 가이자 그 시신도스 시신복
Lesso.
시신도
Zhongxiexi.
ane marsen 조야시 데들 marsen 복 일리시 조야시 데들 일리시 복 what the sense book what is the
Lesso.
what is it
And then another category of perfection could be scriptural perfection. So scriptural perfection is referring to the Buddha's speech. So this would be those scriptures which present Buddha's speech. So if it is a book, the Meidang Inji, the Yanjur Surinam, that's Surinam.
다 팽이 what 팽로 좀 지야 돼요로 술 팽 됐어도 매
Lesso.
아니 인시 로좀 지야 인시 내가 돼도 인리시 복스
Lesso.
어떤 답 말이야 저번 다 라시신 주제시비네 나 버쳤들 시신 용시신스 빠져버려
Lesso. Okay, so if there is a presentation of the resultant perfection or the path perfection, then we would find it would be a scriptural perfection. So if it is a book which presents this path perfection or resultant perfection, then it's a scriptural perfection. Just like it would be, this is an English scripture would be an English book. A medicine book would be a book on medicine would be a medicine book. So this is a scripture on perfection. So what is the perfection that we're speaking of? These two types, path perfection and resultant perfection. So I hope that's clear. Dixon.
시신라 대주리 주고다이나 중시신 라시신 대부시신 송요와데
Lesso.
시신이나 대부시신 차 라시신도 중시신 시신 메타바상의 마도 시신이 바마이스 시신이나 대부시신 차 사지 미쳐서다
Then a zong shexing.
중시신 복 반자바람다
In a zong shexing, jepu shexing. Yeah.
중시신 라시신 대부시신 송마르바 송 옛나 대주리 주고네 송레스 시신이나 대부시신 미쳐 중시신도 라시신 시신 마이스 사지 마이스
Ale.
어떨라고 싫어 바르신님 이시단 뜻이 용랑달라다 다인스 싫어 바르신마들 지마도니요 말레스
Lesso.
용시신도 라시신들
민다.
시신 민다바서
Lesso.
용랑달라다 다인스
Lesso.
어떻게
So when we look at this word perfection, scriptural perfection and path perfection are only nominally designated as perfection. They are not perfection. The only perfection is the resultant perfection. So if it is perfection, it is necessarily resultant perfection. Therefore, scriptural perfection and causal or path perfection are not actually perfection. They're just named as that, but they're not actually perfection, because again, the only perfection is the resultant perfection, which is Buddha, Buddhahood. So these others are merely named as that, but aren't actually perfections. Okay? Dixon. Lesso. Lesso.
ane zimba tuen zimba ane luba sule ane do de samala temba so what this is ane shishin what the jong shishin ta de shishin ta la shishin tembi sonje ki ka to luba ina debata no jiro debata no what is samarba. Yeah.
So dependence on the profound sutras includes such activities as receiving the oral transmission of sutras such as the Prajnaparamita, retaining their meaning and reading them. So here this is saying to rely upon the scriptural perfection, which contains the information about path perfection and resultant perfection. So by retaining the meaning of path perfection and resultant perfection, reading about it, praying, using it as prayer, one is able to produce an antidote to negativities or to non-virtue. And so this is the first category of dependence upon on the profound sutras.
What the Kadundo Samala Tema, Shishila Subin, do you see Shishila Subin, do some do Jung Shishin, what Jung Shishin Sana, and the La Shishin and the Shishin Tembe, and the Swaji Katal Sagres.
So so this Prajnaparamita is speaking of the scriptural perfection, and the scriptural perfection relies upon the path perfection and the resultant perfection. So this is what we find as the content of the scriptural perfection. So this is a book on perfection.
Less. Less. Chunila Jojin, Derman Taba Yicheva was what they could only go the world. Da Magis, Da Mason, the Chuna, Deva Maruba Gogoro, Jidu Signal, Deva Maruba, Tendi Imbase, Deva Maruba is a Da Magis. Tetabi Doni to the Vessel, we said, Louis Debasha Ujitani, and we said la Uji said Ujenji said ni Tony the Uji said in but Ujenji said that Tony to be Lutam to the Jan was raw. We say Chunila Juba also that Tony Taka Tony Gombat inside.
So number 3 is interest in emptiness, and it says it means to comprehend the reality in which there is no self and which is luminously clear, and to have conviction that the mind is primordially pure. So here, this is meditation upon emptiness. So meditation upon the fact that phenomena is not truly established, because it dependently originates. Therefore, there is no self. So when we speak of this clear light, or clear, luminously clear, there are 2 categories. First, the mind, or the awareness that apprehends emptiness, and then there is the actual emptiness itself. So here, this is speaking of the actual emptiness itself. That's it.
Do the Samula Navas Lari, even the Deshi, the Lari Saji Nolul, do the Samulabas, do the Samulabas, what the Matumudua. Then the Tony Gumbas, Tony La Meva said, what the Tony Gumbas, Chijun Matumudua, what the Saji Nol, what the Down of Budua.
Well, so.
Tony La Mebana, Damage USA, Chunila, Juji, Domana Taba Hicheba was what that they get Tony Guatin said.
That's so number 2, number 1 is dependence on the profound sutras, and number 2 is interest in emptiness. And this is really just referring to meditation upon emptiness.
Watching that Debala Temba, the Lari Sajinal Dundua, Zunhala Tembas, Lari Sajinal Zungal Tembas and Dua, Debala Temba.
Lesser.
Debala Temba, the Lari Sajinal Zungala Tembas, Debala Temba, Nega Jabala Subi, Zung Chebajena, Chugaji Duba was what the Sajinal Zungala Tembas.
Lesser.
What is it? Step Digwood, what are.
So number 3 dependence upon recitation. So this is relying upon mantras. It means to recite according to the rituals the special formulas such as the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva. Decent.
What is Zonala Temple? Yaki Jabala Zun Cheba Jan, Chuajan to Duba, Tia Ponzang Shuba Les, Soka Namichibi Me, Mariji to Sansin Kunsi Tar, Deju Mala, Sweetin Long Bar, Chundu Chambi, Meji Dibasis, Pajije, Medik Shinsiba Najin, and Chutin Abuson, Deju, and Hat Jambaina, Deju Medik, Deju Metan, Chundujin Jambaina, and Majidi Dibasi Nures, Patambaje, Peniba Jeta Kala, Nemi Reje, Dona, Mazu, Joajin, Chutin Nemi Vezin de Juji, Dona, Dibi Kaja Seba Juros, what again, Peniba to Marba. And Cheta Kala Nemi Vezij Dona, Cheta de Puna. Nimi is the same sound to Sona Martin Posuna, the Sona Martin Shongorua, example is a Marba. Joajins, and then Joajin. Shooting Yemi, Uazis, shooting Yemi, Uazin de Judges, shooting Abuson, then the Judge, the Judge what the Yamasha and Dabres, the Judge Dona, Dibi Carrot Shongres. Dibi Carol Nunes, Peniba de Rendoa. Tapo Somba de Mena Mala Mamushobajin, and Mena Mala Mamushobajin, So don't sabi Dibi me, Deju Mame Nieto Sevashes, Takante what the Mena Mala Mamushuba Ye Mena Malu Seva Sheba Jinsa example Tom to Marba and then as a Nakun Luba Baina and the Mika Tong example to Marba.
So do
that's a ton to Sabi Dibi Mabade and then Deju Jeba in Deju Mamma of this what they debat send this what the person to
So number 3, dependence upon recitation, gives 3 examples to show the power of this particular remedy. So it says dependence on recitation means to recite according to the rituals the special formulas such as the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva. The Tantra requested by Sabahu states, here we have those 3 examples. The flames from fires that spread in spring forests are out of control, burning up all the thickets. Likewise, the winds of ethical discipline fan the fires of recitation, and the flames of great perseverance burn up sins. So this is the first example, showing how mantric recitation, when coupled with the ethical discipline and effort, allows one to burn up the sins of the wood of our sins. So this example is used to show how that flames that become out of control easily burn up this thickets or this dry wood in a forest. Likewise, our dependence upon our mantras, when we have this ethical discipline and effort, great effort, burn up the wood of our sins. Then the next example, just as when the sun's rays destabilize snow, it melts in the unbearable brilliance. So too do the snows of sins disappear when destabilized by the sunbeams of recitation and ethical discipline. So here it shows how depending upon mantric recitation allows us to burn away, or to melt away the snows of our misdeeds. So that's the second example. Just like the sun shines on snow and it melts, our recitation, when we have ethics added to it, is able to melt away our misdeeds, just like the sun melts away snow. So it's saying melting away the snow of our misdeeds. Lighting a butter lamp in a dark gloom entirely clears away the darkness. Likewise, the darkness of sins accumulated for 1,000 lifetimes is quickly dispelled by the butter lamp of recitation. So reciting mantras is like a butter lamp that illuminates and clears away the darkness of our misdeeds. So this is the third example. So this is number 3, the third remedy, called dependence upon recitation. So these 3 examples can be applied to all 6 remedies, so not just this one. So all of these remedies that are presented here do what this dependence upon recitation, the quote relating to the dependence upon recitation does, if you will. So these 3 examples pertain to the other 5 as well. So we would look at it like the wisdom, so the meditation on the fire, which is the meditation upon emptiness, burns away our misdeeds. The sun, the rays, let me say this again. How do you say that? Burns away our misdeeds. The meditation upon emptiness is like the sun that melts away our misdeeds, and like the butter lamp that clears away our misdeeds. He didn't add darkness, so I didn't. It clears away our misdeeds. So then, what are some signs? It says, repeat the recitation until you see signs that you have cleared away your sins. So these are signs that there has been a level of purification, but a complete purification of a misdeed is very, very far away. So we can't say that these, if these signs appear, then a complete purification has taken place. We can just understand that some level of purification has taken place.
dawa thunga nyala tangsun deba tabitaris tene nyala nakhalan ruwa nyala tangsuna deba tabitaris nyala mamba nyala tangsuna deba tabitare duwa nyala na mai da manabun zin manabud mai tuba nyala tangsuna deba tabitaris tene mana galun me genu thunga sa moga nan wa thunga nyala tangsuna deba tabita insarwa ta woman ju shilan zibatan lampa la shwenba chuchu la shwenba relan ziba sangi 세 된도 대봐 가상 된도 제바다 네 최년 봐 최년 매봐 인바 어디 대바션 다천 인바데 규지 중도 송도사 규지 중 하인저다.
So then there's a text that gives a presentation of these signs, and it's called the Formula of Exhortation, and it's a tantric text. So it says the Formula of Exhortation states that the signs are dreaming the following: vomiting bad food, so this is a sign of purification; consuming food such as yogurt and milk, or even dreaming about drinking orange juice or some other kind of beverage; throwing up, vomiting; seeing the sun and the moon; flying, moving through the air, it says, or flying; blazing fires; subduing water buffalo; and dark persons. It says persons here in dark clothing, but it would be either black persons or dark persons. Seeing a community of monks or nuns, so seeing fully ordained monks and nuns. Seeing a tree that gives out a milky substance, riding upon an elephant or bull, climbing upon a lion throne, climbing up a mansion or a mountain, and listening to the teaching. So all of these, again, are presented in the Formula of Exhortation, and they show how one knows that there's been a purification after the application of the four opponent powers. So we'll take a short break.
너도 samala temba debala temba kunila meba tene ta kuzula temba kuzula temba sheva tro ta kuzula temba do deba kuzula temba sa kuzula temba lari saji no tenjin ba sa tenjin ba sonja kuzula temba sa tenjin ba ta sanji le tene ana Sanjay Danti, Chedin la Kuzula Teba.
Sanjay la Teba.
Sanjay la Teba Niene, Ti Kuzu Sheba Usa. Sanjay la Teba Niene, Ti Kuzu Sheba U. And Saji Nala Tenzin Basa. Sanjay la Teba Niene, Sanjay Kudenzimba, Sedan, Mudan, Jazan, Sai, Kudenzimba, Kuzimba, what an Ingilota. Sheba and Sanjil Tebanian and Shetanzuya, Sanjik Shetanzuya, to the Hijirota. Chenrezig, Chenrezig, Kushia, Setamuta, and Shetanzuya, Judici, Yedanta Madrid, the Kangachiba.
That's so. So the next number 4 is dependence upon images, means to make images of the Buddha once you have acquired faith in him. So this means that if you construct once you have this faith of conviction in the Buddha, and you construct an image of him or her, then you are engaging in the remedy which is called dependence upon images. So whether you make this object with gold, silver, clay, or copper, or iron, it doesn't matter. It just matters that you have this faith and are constructing the image with the basis of this faith. So you can construct any image that is a Buddha. So any of the deities from the 4 classes of Tantra, Chenrezig, Maitreya, any of these deities can be made or painted. So if you could make a statue with all of these different types of metals and mediums and so forth, or you could even paint a tanka of the image. If you have this faith, then you're engaging in the remedy, which is dependence upon images.
타투바 쉐바고 상지다 티 최된 라드네 최번 타수바 최번 담을 시 최번 나게 최바 더코나니 최바 어디는 최바 뭐고 최바 가르피아에는 사마피는 지고저보다 안는 아주 사통하다 네 도루다 캄바다 모타다 뭐 참아야 표현은 지고저보다 최번 타수바 쉐바 what 최바는 비바인 디바타는 거저보다
Yes, sir. The next, dependence on worship or dependence on offering, means to make a variety of offerings to an image of the Buddha or to his or her stupa. So this is referring to making the many varieties of offerings that you can make, inner offerings, outer offerings, things that you eat, things that you drink, your clothing, your house, your car. All of these can be offered, and once they are offered, then you are engaging in the remedy, which is called dependence upon worship or dependence upon offering. Dixon.
What is it? That what that Chuba Channel Temple da. Chuba Channel Temple Sanji da. Geshe Chenmo na je Chen Tuishin Zong was. Sanji da Geshe Chenmo Sanji da Geshe Chenmo na Shachu Chenmo Shibu Marbe. Chenmo na je Chen Tuishin Zong da Channel Temple Secrets. 다가 저한테 가능 하나는 천지상으로 example 대다 오면은 마음에 소소 그때 는 샤자도가 다지 뉴제되는 공원된 가지고네 넘어이나 대발을 템바 하지 막고네 대다 오면은 마음에 소 장바이나 천라 템바 저는 좀 많이 배워 주듯이 예당 참 집어야지로다
Okay.
천라 대바든 대발 템바 잡아
Number 6 is dependence on names, means to hear the recitation of and retain the names of Buddha's and great conquerors' children. So great conquerors' children here is referring to the bodhisattvas. So what is the difference between this number 6 and number 3? So number 3, dependence on recitation. So if you are engaging in the recitation of the mantra of Buddha Shakyamuni, for instance, and you are reciting the mantra Teata Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Ye Soha. If while you are doing that, you are simultaneously doing the front and self-generation practices as well as the visualization of the mantra garland on the moon mandala that's circumambulating and so forth. So if you are visualizing these things, the ritual that goes along with the mantra, then you are engaging in dependence upon recitation. If you are merely reciting the names, reciting the mantras themselves, without any of the accompanying practices, such as front and self-generation, etc., then you are engaging in dependence upon names. So this is the difference between dependence upon recitation and dependence upon names.
Jobaja din sarwata to somba ne mango ju yang da bara domba te de ne suju go ne go son ji le da nyomo ba ta chu ji ji ba she ba sa ta go son ju go ne de ba mango ju da chu bung le de so ka lo rang sa ba rang she ba rang she ne de ba ro Jel diba shejuwa inaya dibarwa. Jel diba shebala jesu yana jene dibarwa da. Wade shijinga diba sagi mehnya be jobad sheba ina nas diba rang sabadil nöndagre. Jel sa jubadil nöndagre. Jel sabala jesu yana tere sungal nöndagre. Wade ne nimi hibidula sungu se marba. To somebody mago ju yang da ba dongbas mago ju deba mago ju sa ge men
Bless you.
Sagmanya but Lumba Hirota. Then Suju Gone, Gosonje Leda Nyomoba Tan, Chuji Jiba, Chubung Diba Jere,
Bless you.
Sheba Zina Rangi Sheba, Rangi Saba, Rangi Chubung Le Saba, Jela Chubung She Sat Juba, and Jen Saba Jisu Iran Sheba. Sheba Jesu Shedu Juba Tan, Jesu Yeranwa. Jesu Yeranwas, Chicheba Tanji, Dumbas, Tanji Danagres, Tanji Nunagres, Nemi Himidul Sundos. Tanya Shishi Diba Saga Mania, but Dosan Cheba Ina Wate, Diba Rang Sabatal Nunagre, Jena Sadu Chubatal Nunagre, Jen Sabala, Jesu Yeran Shebatal Nunagres.
Okay.
What Negu,
Lesser. The third power, so we've gone through then the 6 parts of number 2, which is the power of applying remedies. So now we're on the power of turning away from faults. So this is having a resolve that in the future you will not engage in this particular negative action or these particular actions again. So the third power is actually restraining yourself from the 10 non-virtuous actions. In the Sun Essence Sutra, the Buddha said that this restraint destroys all karma, afflictions, and obscuration of the teaching created physically, verbally, or mentally by way of killing and the like. The third power eliminates bad actions that you have previously created yourself, caused others to create, or have rejoiced in the others creating. A confession that lacks an attitude of wholehearted restraint becomes merely words. Then Chubung le kabiare Rinpoche.
Chubung le
de kabiare.
Chuji Jiba Siemudwe.
Chuji Dipa. Oh, okay.
Chubung le Chuji Jiba Sheba Shedu Chuba, Rangi Sheba, Jen Shedu Chuba, Jen Sheba la Jesu Iran. Sheba Tanji Tanagar Jumba, Nimbin Dulu.
Several do. Chuji Jipa. Okay. Jesu Yeram. That's good. The Chuji Dipa. So here, this is actively stopping in the future any of the non-virtues that you have created, previously caused others to create, or rejoiced in the creating of. So here, it speaks of the actual, where it's talking about, I'm trying to translate this at the same time that I'm doing it. So here, when it talks about obscurations of the teaching, it's speaking of the non-virtue of abandoning the Dharma. So it's this obscuration of the Dharma is referring to the non-virtue, which is abandoning the Dharma, and then it talks. Bad actions. Does it get into this? Damn. So that specifically, it's speaking of here. So obscurations of the teaching created physically, verbally, or mentally by way of killing and the like. The third power eliminates bad actions that you have previously created yourself, caused others to create, or have rejoiced in creating. So this turning away from this non-virtue actually harms the non-virtue previously created that we've caused others to create, or that we've rejoiced in the creating of. So this turning away harms those previously committed deeds that fall into those 3 categories. So that's it. I'll get back to this after if I find something that's really needs to be looked at. But this is talking about the karma that one's created by abandoning the Dharma and rejoiced in caused others to or previously created one's self. Khensur Rinpoche.
Oh yeah.
I hate when this happens.
다시 타반의 동생 매바스 디바사가 닌 타반 디바사가 매냐부 동생도 매바 이나 안에 샤바제가 제나 치장레스 치장마도 네 치장도 로알라 고네 신체 도모시 론레 손바 도와 자친relation 제르메조도마 세시나고도와 대셔 신체 제비 동생 개칠라 제와양 또 동보라라레조 신체는 디바사가 그냥 매냐비 동생도 용어라 또 동보 네 나바선지 먹고도 쉬비도 말봐 저바지야들
Lasso.
저바디 아부 맨나 동생도 용어마스 저바디 아부 요나 동생도 용그레스 어디 저바들라래 그레스
Lasso. So it's very important in order for the third power to actually work, this actual resolve to turn away from negativity, a commitment to turn away from negativity, one has to have truly arrived at that first power of eradication. One truly has to have regret for having done the negativity in order to really have this wholehearted resolve to not create it again. So we see the importance of this first step and its relation to the third step. Khensur.
뒤진가서도 나바선지부터 네발하도부터 니바장도 말봐. 어때 안 잡은다부도 왔다. 네발하도부터 용화라 나바선지부터 라레그레스 저바 매나 네발하도부터 도마레스 저바디 하부요나 하도부터 디하부용거레스 아불라라레스.
So first it's really indispensable to create this, to arrive at this regret. In order to really apply remedies, it's necessary to have this regret as well. So we see how important this first step of the power of eradication is, because once we generate this regret, then we we wish to apply a remedy. Then we wish to turn away from what we've done if we regret having done it.
What diba 신지 diba 제면 너무 많이 봐도 또 롱레 돈데니 뒤돌에 숨어지로 롱레 숨바 도와 자친들이 도스 롱레 숨자바데 자친들이 숨도스 도와 자친들이 내려면 여대 도다 샤탄이 여대 여기 도타와다 샤탄이 가마 샤탄 오니 피지 추지 신예제제 자친들이 임바요 도와근 제가 추신이 진세비 대바들 자신지스. 어떻게 도안돌을 송바데 신시 동모네 디바 신시 마사냐 반돌을 송요아레스 송바데 자신지가 송도스.
Okay.
자신지.
So then we find then this presentation given by, it says Dharma Mitra's commentary on the Sutra on the Discipline. So the Sutra on the Discipline is referring to the Vinaya Sutra, and this particular text is a commentary on the Vinaya Sutra. And in this there are different divisions of Vinaya. And in this particular division we find this question and answer section that asks very particular questions to the person who's engaged in non-virtue, and one of them is there a regret? Is there subsequent restraint? Are you making a commitment to restrain yourself from committing this non-virtue again? So we see even in the Vinaya teachings where the importance of this this restraint. Khensur.
Oji tatene tato jiba tenji to marwe Jandu Senje Gumbas.
Detsugonge, the Detsulogo. Therefore, it is very important to have an attitude of restraint within which you have conviction not to commit that action again. Moreover, the development of this attitude depends on the first power. Decent. Gongel Mebachi.
Oya. Ta Juba Tenji to Jandu the Senje Gumba.
Lesser.
Jandu Dama de Le, Josun Ju, Josun Yu, Josun Son Chu, Jandu Laja, Dama Momchinza.
Lesser.
Ta Josun Ju, and then I saw the Buddha Chile on the Shigarota.
Okay.
Jandu Ji Sangorota.
Lesser.
Kupama Josun Ju.
Lesser.
Then I was the Chaganashi, Dungala, the Susandan, Shinana, Jandu Ju, but the Jandu Ju Sansona, and the Saji Conju Conju, so we change of it, Jandu Dungushua, Josun Ju, Conju Sonje, Josun Ju, to what the Puguchon de Chilesona, Mana Josun Ju Naji, what then the Jandu Ures. That Josun Ju Pen Marbe, the one she pen down, Mengal New Pen Mumdua. What is the Tamal Chisa or the Kalete and the Jimano?
So this fourth category is the power of foundation or power of basis. So this is referred to two categories, refuge and bodhicitta. They're the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So refuge we previously went over very extensively when we went over the categories of the causes of going for refuge. Based on that, the objects to which you go for refuge to, and then how to go for refuge. And the last category, advices on refuge or the precepts of refuge. So the first category presents the causes for refuge. And here this is fear and a faith of conviction. So the example is given of a child who becomes very scared when running into a dog. And then runs to his or her parents for protection, or goes for refuge to his or her parents, so that he or she can be protected. So here the comparison is made to the fear that a child has to the fear that we have of suffering in cyclic existence, and we go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the Buddha jewel, the Dharma jewel, and the Sangha jewel. So based on our fear of cyclic existence, like the fear that the child has of the dog, we go to our parents because, like the child has for the dog, we have like the fear that the child has for the dog, we have a fear for cyclic existence. The child goes for refuge to his or her parents because of having faith in them. We go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha because we have faith in those objects, and that faith is that those objects will protect us from what we fear. So we find the first category, the causes of going for refuge, and that's explained by the example of the child and how he or she has fear and then faith. And then based on that, the objects to which you go for refuge to. So based on that fear and faith, what do you go for refuge to? Well, you have faith then in the objects of the three jewels. So the three jewels are the objects to which you go for refuge to. And then the third section is how you go for refuge. How did the child seek protection? So we go for refuge by actually seeking the protection of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And then the last category is advices on refuge, or the precepts of once we have gone for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, what we should do in relation to those three jewels. And then we find other categories also which show, for instance, the benefits of going for refuge. And then we have the presentation given in the scriptural tradition as well as the oral tradition in the text. So there's a lot of information that we've gone over about the subject of refuge before. Dixon.
Teba Chenmo Jugo Senji what they think it was.
So the door. So then the next, the mind that aspires to enlightenment is the door to the great vehicle. So the mind that aspires to enlightenment is the door to the great vehicle.
That Teba Chenmo Jugo Senji Gombas. That what the Senji de Jundi Manga do Jugo Senji Sudan. Dajanyaba Jugo Senji Su. What do Sudan de the Marba?
So this refers to meditation on bodhicitta. So when we say refuge in bodhicitta, we're referring to meditation on the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And now we arrive at those two practices, the 7-point cause and effect, achieving or realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and then the second practice called the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice. So these are the two practices which will cause the arisal of the mind that aspires to enlightenment. Dixon.
That Jundi Manga do not truth Juji, Mashi Tinde, Tenzo, Yung Jama Tije, Hasan Truth Juji, and the Chanju Shen Jebomana.
Less so. So the 7-point cause and effect practice has 6 causes and 1 result. So the 6 causes are realizing all sentient beings are our mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, love through the force of attraction, great compassion, and then the extraordinary attitude. And then after these causes are present, then we have the result, which is the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or bodhicitta.
That's in Tanji Raka Maya Bashivala, the Jong Hashi Ugre, Jong Hashi Jo, Rangi Jola Toma member, Sentient Tanji, Jola Toma member, Mashibato, and the Sentient Tanji Raka Maya Bakua Cabaret.
So in order for us to realize this first step, which is all sentient beings are our mother, we have to establish the existence of previous lives. Because if we don't establish that we have had previous lives, and we don't establish that other sentient beings have had previous lives, then it's very difficult for us to establish this point that all sentient beings are our mothers.
What does Borigina Mashi what the Kale Santa Udos Marbe?
So these steps of recognizing sentient beings as our mother and remembering their kindness and wishing to repay kindness is something that we need to go over and over again. So the other practice is called equalizing and exchanging self with others. And here this is changing one's attitude. Taking the attitude which cherishes one's self, the self-cherishing attitude, and converting it into an attitude which cherishes others. So the exchange or the change is the emphasis on one's focus. So we normally focus on ourselves, so we cherish ourselves. So the exchange or the change is the change in focus. We then exchange that focus, which was previously on ourselves, cherishing ourselves, and change it into one which cherishes others in that same way that we cherish ourselves. So this is the exchange or the change that takes place.
What does Saji Jibal do? Jajib Saji Jig on Saji Jiba. Tomba the Jayton, Tomashi Jibitu, Debashi Jibitu, and then Somba Jibate, Datu Tomu the Jebas, what the Jibare doa, Datu Tomu the Jebatlote, or Tenmate Remodoa, Jaj with the Sachi good dinner, Undrodoa.
Then the Kaba good so do.
That the know what Tajit Sanjay Gumba was the Lacher Jayu le dambu deba jun gunhazu ji song jang nyeba yongsu zuban doji sang wo deba chan marba deba de tenji do chan ro nyeba doji chan re ta deba dalu ta supo na jeba wo tenma saji gudi na dambu do tenma yongre
okay.
Deba tasu podan je wa tena lul mamudwa.
Seldu.
Te jaji be saje guti ne. Poten ma ngaso de chindeshi de jara gdo. Te mena od kal khabres.
Okay. Then we're about to get to the end of the section. This section, Jayan Sheba's how one remedies misdeeds. So I'll just read through this. The fourth power is going for refuge to the three jewels and cultivating the spirit of enlightenment. With regard to this, the conqueror spoke in general about a variety of means through which beginners could remove their sins. However, a complete remedy requires all four powers to be present. So this ends the section, and now we move on to the fourth section. So when we're looking at Jayan Sheba's outline, we've gone through the first three, and now we're on number 4. And Jayan Sheba states that there are 9 sections in this fourth section. So this is what we'll be going over now. And without Jayan Sheba's commentary, it would be very difficult to organize all of this information. And just as a translator's note, especially looking at the Tibetan, a lot of times the English is organized for us because there's a commentary being given, and it's not as organized in the Tibetan. So this section, without Jayan Sheba's commentary, if you're looking at the Tibetan, it would be quite hard to kind of extrapolate the meaning.
Sheba tasu chomu je hotel saje gudri ne tamu de ma yore tamu deba talu ne nganu dongen chenmu ji juna dongen chungwa ji junjo wa tamu re do wa nganu deba talu wote nganu dongen chenmu ji juna ana dongen chungwa ji junjo wa 다 두고 어떤이 사마르다. 근데 니완 지역에 디바사요나. 근데 샤도 제네 니완지 디바다네 텔레 총화 이달지야. 대다네 텔레 총화 돈을 지야. 대다네 멀리지바이나 메이텔레네 켄식 나서다 TV 나서다 카르카시 플랜카시 나와라 차보 어떤을 때네 dramashi moyo tesuke deba ta ne samarda shadon abajeben niwan jia le ta ne de chwa idal jia te ta ne tonul jia te ta ne mal jeba ina ta me tel jega na shi dungela suba wo tesuke deba ta no samarba
lesa
wo to so nizar.
So then now we begin the first category of Jayan Shebas among the 9 in the fourth section. One way is when small sufferings occur instead of the great sufferings of rebirth in the miserable realms. So this is the first category of Jayan Sheba's 9 that shows how sins are removed or misdeeds are removed. So this is referring to a misdeed that has been purified, for instance, that would normally give rise, that would definitely give rise to rebirth in the hell realm, is purified and at its lowest kind of level or lowest step, then would, instead of giving rise to rebirth in the hell realm, would give rise to a hungry ghost. And then at another level of next level of purification takes place, and then it would give rise to an animal realm. And then a little more purification takes place, and it gives rise to a human realm. Or within the human realm, one has various experiences of suffering, such as tuberculosis or cancer or some kind of car crash or water trouble or flooding. Maybe Rinpoche said water trouble in English. Or some kind of disease, some kind of suffering. So one would normally have to experience the hell realm rebirth, but this purification has then changed the resultant experience into one that's less suffering. So this is the first category. Jumping. Yeah. Jump out of the realm. Less so. Jumbo mache. Ale. Okay, well, we can look it up then. Another is that even if you were born in a miserable realm, you do not experience its sufferings. So this would be if you have purified a misdeed, even though you are born into one of the lower realms of cyclic existence, you don't experience the suffering that you normally would there. So Rinpoche is saying that there's an example, and we'll have to look it up in the Nagarjuna's letter to a friend about King Marchita, who was able to jump out of the realm that he was abiding in and didn't have to experience the things that were going on there. So we can look that up. It's in Nagarjuna's letter to a friend. And let me just make sure I got everything. So this would be what number 2 is referring to. Even though you're born as a result of non-virtue in the lower realms, you don't experience all of those negativities that are present for others. Diksan Rinpoche. Still another is a mere headache in the present life that serves to remove the sin. So this would be instead of a greater negative experience, one would, for instance, get a headache in this life. Or we could also say things like getting cancer or tuberculosis. These things are ways in which a karma that would have been much greater suffering can be transformed into a less an experience with less suffering. Likewise, the sins whose effects you must experience for a long time may become ones whose effects you experience only for a short time, or that you need not experience at all. So here, sins whose effects you must experience for a long time could refer to a length of time as long as an eon. That kind of non-virtue could be converted into an experience which only lasts a day or a week or a month instead of an eon. This is the next way in which non-virtue or misdeed is removed or purified. Diksun. Less so. So a purification that makes it so that you only have to experience the suffering or the negativity for a very short time, and sometimes not even experience it at all.
도지 창 루마루 다 슈마자바다 주르르 수주고네 옌베 타지든 야바메 도사 다 디바 다루 다마다 소마데 디바 샤나 지겐데 bana shaju semban shana jeben diba chebe tanu raja ge shana jeba nandin tanu ne tuge shana jena chungus tanu tanga su shana jegen le damana mo son damana to chijon damana mo sa diba dalu damana mo yungres tajidin ya bayo mares.
So the next one shows that there is no certainty with regard to these individual misdeeds of how a purification takes place, or a definite way in which these non-virtues are removed, because each individual is different. So here it says there is no certainty about how sins are removed, because it depends on whether the purifier is of great or little strength, whether the remedy is one in which the four powers are complete or incomplete, intense or not intense, of long or short duration, and so forth. So, for instance, if a bodhisattva engages in these four opponent powers, then there is a much greater strength than if a solitary realizer does. And if a solitary realizer does, there's a greater strength than if a hearer does or a shravaka does. So it really depends on the way of thinking, the individual's way of thinking. That is what dictates what the experience will be. So the greater the level of thinking. So literally, the greater the level of thinking. So bodhisattva is at the highest level. The greater the purification will be. So it really depends upon the purifier when we're talking about how the purification works and what and how non-virtue is removed in general. So we have to speak of it specifically and specific to the individual. So in the 9 categories that Jayan Sheba presents, these points that are made are the first category. So all of these points are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9. They're the point. These points are all fall into the first of the 9 categories. So the second.
Lena Kebajan, Chumaza, Shezon Base, what the
Chapamajon,
what the Tazitan, the legitimate Chapamajon, never told you so, Shadam Majena, Lake Kebaja, Saba, Kebaja Shiba in the Lelichus of Madungan, which is never told you so, when the son, Tanaris, Jagamaris. What the Niba tell him.
So the second category among these 9 is a debate that takes place the debate that takes place. So it says the statement in both sutra and texts on discipline that karma does not perish even in 100 eons is made with regard to the karma for which you have not cultivated a remedy with the 4 opponent powers. So this is Geshe Rinpoche stating that this statement that's made, this thesis that karma does not perish even in 100 years, is not necessarily so. Why is it not necessarily so? Because if that karma has had the 4 opponent powers applied to it, then it can be purified and it will perish. But this particular statement is referring to karma that has not had the 4 opponent powers applied to it. So this is what Geshe Rinpoche states. Geshe Rinpoche states that this statement by Buddha is referring to those karmas that haven't been purified, that haven't had these 4 opponent powers applied to them. So if they haven't, then that karma doesn't perish even for 100 eons. But those karmas that have had that application can be purified, and this statement does not refer to them. So in debate terms, it would say, so do the four opponent powers have the ability to purify all non-virtues? And one would say yes. And then the other person would say, no, they do not have the power to purify all non-virtues, because the Buddha stated karma does not even perish in 100 eons. Then using Geshe Rinpoche's response, one would say that's not necessarily so, because karma that has had the application of the four opponent powers can perish. Digsun.
Oh yeah, that what's about the number don't do one Lena Keba Jayan, Chumasawa, Shesomban, Shesom Bejo, London Jan,
Lesso.
Shesomban, Tuji, Nebo, Gomba Mebala Gonchis, Nebo Tojon Shadan Sheba Mena, Le Chusak Marish, Tuji, Nebo. Shebatar Janana, Nyonge Jan Daba, Sonde, Jedon de Genles, Data Ganda, Niebi, Shunyawana, Dibi Chujin was debat to Gatan Gres, Tadan Tutan Dembi, Niebi, Ten Seba, Seba Yinte, Bena, Segi Yala Subajinos, Segi Nabutan, Karin Nabiana. Open the tenages. Tambi Chuji, Dibala Suba, Chubunga to Zero. Tambi Chuji, Dibala Suba, Tanji Jang, Cheke to Shibi, Chuje no, Shesha Yu, Rebe, Lonsenji Tua, Toy Nena, Maluban Dabanjo, Yinos, what the Nibatu.
So the second, all this is part of the second section. Karma, is made with. So this statement is made with regard to the karma for which you have not cultivated the remedy with the four powers. However, if you purify yourself with the remedy having the aforementioned four powers, it is said that you will even remove karma that you are bound to experience or certain to experience. Haryabhadra's long explanation of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra in 8,000 lines states, thus with powerful remedies you can completely eliminate the unfavorable factors which diminish when you possess the group of remedies. This, for example, is like the tarnish on gold, because all such things as obscurations to the sublime teaching will necessarily diminish, as just explained. You will completely eliminate infractions which originate from arrogance. So if one applies the four opponent powers, then a purification will take place, will definitely take place. In the same way that gold that's tarnished can be purified or cleansed, a mind that is tarnished, when one is tarnished by the stains of non-virtue or misdeeds, then one can be purified. A person can be purified in the same way that the tarnish on gold can be completely removed and cleaned. Our non-virtues can be completely removed in that same way. So that's what that means, and this falls under section number 2. So we're going to end there. We'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara is in. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Rinpoche, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, the spiritual friend trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts, with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche, Gutsi Shapi Dero Lam, Matsu Lamrim Chenmo